Welcome back to the Moonflower Show.
Welcome
Hello.
to the only show where we don't know.
What? What was that?
Our new logo.
What a logo. That's a tagline. A catchphrase.
I know what a logo is.
Yeah, we actually have an auditory logo now.
Yeah, it's really cutting edge.
Yeah, wow. 2022.
Winter is saying the year as an exclamation because we just watched the episode of Gravity Falls where the boy band that's actually made of like genetically engineered clone boys just randomly exclaims 2013 sometimes.
Yeah, and then I was like, do you remember when people used to just say the year like that? Like, they would be like, 2013, 2014, and then we got to, like, the last half of the 2010s and then 2020. Like, nobody's out here going, like, 2020!
No, people want nothing to do with 2020 and beyond.
I don't know, I have a good feeling about 2022.
Oh, yeah?
I do have a good feeling about it.
I mean, so far, it's... Well, I mean, New Year's was nice, but so far, it's not been all that.
I think it's going to be a year of slow change in a positive direction.
You did say that. You have said that.
I don't think we're going to do a 180 overnight, but I think that we're going to slowly find ourselves in a better and better situation.
That'd be nice. That sounds nice.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Oh, well, here's hoping, Moonflowers.
Here's hoping. And on the topic of New Year's, today we're going to be talking to you about what our experience has been like over the past year and a half making content and what it's been like for us as content creators. And what we've learned, what we wish that we knew, and just what it's been like for us.
Yeah, not exactly sure how that relates to New Year's, but... I mean, I guess, like, we're reflecting on a period of time.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a reflective episode about the story so far, basically, about the Moonflower Show and, like, our personal experiences and journeys with it.
Yeah. Would you like to start, Colin?
Yeah. So, yeah, we're just going to be, like, sharing things that we've learned, things we have... maybe things we maybe wish we knew.
Yeah.
Starting out. And I guess a good place to start would be that it's been rewarding to commit myself to something that I don't really have an obligation to be doing. And
so this is number one. We're gonna number them.
Yeah, we're doing like a list.
Yeah,
like a list.
Like a list. So number one.
It's rewarding to commit yourself to something that you don't really have an obligation to be doing. And this may not be the experience for Winter or for you listening. Maybe you already have experience in this field, but. For me, I guess I've never been really like a self-starting person. Like just starting projects for the hell of it. And now this thing that we started and just kind of decided to commit ourselves to, and really have no obligation to continue to do. I mean, obviously we have patrons now, and for them and also anybody who's a fan of the show, we want to continue to provide our content and keep up with the promises that we've made. But other than that, we're really only doing this because we want to do it. And that's been really rewarding to just kind of commit myself to personally. You really see that you really can just go out into the world and start something, and it is what you make of it,
Yeah.
And that's a valuable thing to just like be aware of.
So that's kind of the reward that you feel like you've gotten from putting effort into this, is the knowledge that if you have an idea, there are things that you can do to kind of put that idea into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And see, hearing that was so interesting to me because I am the exact opposite. I am a self-starter. I feel like I learned at a relatively young age that if I had an idea, I could put it out into the world. I think I learned that in high school. And I think that's because I went to a really good school and I was surrounded by some really supportive mentors as well. And I was pushed, you know, not just in school, but like in extracurriculars. And, you know, I just like committed myself to like following through in the extracurriculars. Like I was in Girl Scouts and we were kind of like pushed to go for the Gold Award. And that's how I ended up starting that program.
Right.
That gives basically, I'm not sure if they do it free or if it's still very, very low cost. But I essentially like started this program that gave $20 like year-long lessons to like elementary school kids, like anybody who wanted to sign up, and like all the parents had to pay was like $20 a year for materials. Yeah, and I feel like that was like my first go at realizing like, oh shit, like I can actually put something out into the world. I like remember the moment when we worked with a mentor who was like assigned to us, and I was like trying to get the program approved with my school, and nothing like it had ever been done before. So I kept getting like bopped around between different offices and different people telling me, oh no, you gotta go talk to this person. Oh no, you gotta go talk to this person. And it ended up in a situation where I was between two offices and both of them were telling me to go talk to the other one. And my mentor told me like, hey, you have a fucking good idea here. And you are doing people a service by trying to start this. So here's what you should do. She said, you should go into one of their offices and just say, I don't need, like, to do this the bureaucratic way. Like, I am willing to do whatever it will take to get this thing off the ground. Please just let me know what you need from me, like, logistically. Like, what paperwork you need for me to do this in, like, a legal manner, you know? And I will do it. And she was like, make sure that they understand that you're serious and that you are literally willing to do that. Because they're used to dealing with people, students, who, like, don't do that. And I was like, okay. And then she said, if they still tell you no at that point, she said, you will have no choice but to ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I was, I think, 16 when that happened. I remember it so clearly. Like, I remember this struggle, and I was, like, getting so frustrated. I was, like, ready to give up. And then she gave me this advice, and I feel like it's stuck with me ever since. Point being, I guess this is a really roundabout way of saying, it hasn't occurred to me since I was a teenager that is a lesson that is not yet, like, available, or not yet, like, knowledge for everybody.
Yeah, and I think depending on your experience growing up, it like you either have learned that or not. Like some people never learn that. But I've always been the kind of person that comes up with a million reasons not to do something.
Yeah.
But I think the Moonflower Show is helping me not be that way. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be wildly successful for it to be worth it either.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that brings us, it's a good transition to our next point. That is, wishing we knew that people were actually going to support us on Patreon. Yes. And we actually have, like, surprisingly good numbers of, like, listeners and downloads, which is really exciting. Like, when we were planning this episode, sorry to, like, take this, I didn't know if you wanted to alternate doing points or anything.
No, please go ahead.
But we were planning this episode, and Winter was, like, showing me, like, the numbers for, like, the downloads and the listens on Buzzsprout, and the really cool thing was that we could see a map of like how many people from each like part of the world, each like continent had downloaded our podcast. And there's people in Asia that are listening to the Moonflower Show, and I'm like, whoa!
There's people in, I think, over 30 different countries who have listened to us at least once.
Isn't that, like, nuts? Like, I would have never expected when we made that first, or when not when we made the first episode, but when we made the decision to make this podcast like public, that would be the case almost a little over a year later. Like, wow. It's so neat and so motivating to keep doing this.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I think that you can look at numbers in like the data. You can't fudge data, but you can tell yourself like a certain story with the data.
Yeah.
And so for us, you know, we're not out here making like a top podcast, you know what I mean? But the stories that we can tell with the data that we do have are like really inspiring to us. Like, we found out recently that we were on 7 different people's like top Spotify podcast in their 2021 Wrapped, which is like, okay, 2 of them might have been me and Colin, and we know who one of the other people is because she told us.
Yes.
But then there's 4 whole other people, like, who that was their top podcast for the year. That's great, you know?
That makes me stoked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes me want to keep making the Moonflower Show for all those people out there. So thank you for listening.
Yeah.
And for downloading our podcast.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see that we got some Moonflowers and some fans out there.
Yeah. It's really, really cool for us, you know? Yeah. And to even see like the numbers increasing like ever so slightly, you know, each episode and each month, it's like,
oh yeah,
it really really makes our day to like see that number going up.
And we're growing. Watch out.
Yeah, our downloads per episode is going up. You know, if you look at the like, I've gotten really into the statistics of this and like kind of tried to figure out like what numbers actually matter and what don't. Like, so as you make more content, obviously your not viewers, but your downloads and your listens are going to go up. But what you need to keep an eye on is the downloads per episode at any given point. You know what I mean? So like with your first episode, you have like however many downloads just for that one episode. But then when you're on like episode 13, you know, how many downloads total do you have divided by the number of episodes at any given point. And for us, it's like slowly creeping up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's super exciting.
Yes. Yeah. And we feel just like really grateful to be experiencing that, you know, that people want to listen to what we have to say, that people feel like our commentating is valuable and worthwhile to listen to.
Yeah, and my original idea for this episode too was that you know, if you are thinking of putting some content out into the world but you're not sure about it, this might be some like helpful tidbits to know about if you're trying to do that. And I guess the takeaway from this point is, if you have something that you want to make, chances are that there's somebody out there that will enjoy it.
Yeah.
It is worth it to make whatever you want to make.
Yeah.
For sure.
100%. 100%. And I think just to kind of wrap up this point a little bit before we move on to the next one, I think early on, Colin and I were kind of, well, maybe more so me, but I was kind of thinking like, I don't want to make a nothing podcast, you know? And so it's been kind of a journey for me to get to a point where I do think that us just sitting here and talking, you know, and sometimes putting research into what we're saying, and sometimes driving all across, you know, the southern tier of New York to try all the different fast food French fries, you know, that sort of thing is actually valuable and worthwhile to make. You know, like, I want to live in a world where people make content like that.
Yes.
And that's been kind of a journey for me to get to that point and to like see what we're creating as worthwhile, you know? Yeah. And I guess that can kind of lead into our maybe point number 3, which is, I wish that we had gotten clear on our values as creators from day 0 of making this podcast. And the reason I say that is because it's funny because now all the OG Moonflowers are gonna know this weird little like 2-month-long pocket where we got really into branding, and it's like in our episodes.
Well, I think it's kind of plain to see if you go back and listen to some of the episodes.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is like there was a 2-month period when I was like, we need to start taking this seriously, and I started researching like how we could start branding the podcast, and the whole thing just felt like so off to me. It felt so off and it felt wrong, and I feel like I kept pushing us to like go in a certain direction because I felt like that was what was smart business-wise. But at the end of the day, I decided that it was more important to just be ourselves, and if ourselves meant not plugging things and not having a standard introduction, then that was what we were going to go with. And if that means that this podcast is less successful, then screw it, because it's more important to be genuine in what you want to make. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and success means different things. It doesn't just mean more numbers, more growth, more revenue. Success can come in the form of feeling proud of the content that you're putting out. So
yeah. I really just like don't want to be this like hyper branded
thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to sell people something, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's tricky because I'm starting to like it's not selling people things that I have a problem with, because ultimately what we're doing right now is like not selling, but what we're doing is persuasive, right?
Yeah.
What we're doing is persuasive. And the thing that we're trying to persuade anybody who's listening of is to keep listening and maybe get more involved in our community and maybe even support us on Patreon. But I think it's about the way that we do that, and the way that we were doing it for those couple months where I was like really into branding was like so, how do I put this? So just like disingenuous to me, and like so it was almost like too pushy.
Yeah, it was very corporate.
That's exactly the right word. You know, and I don't have a problem being pushy. It was corporate. It was. And that's like not who I am. And it's funny because at the end of the day, being genuine and making authentic content is actually going to be better for you in the long run.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like funny how that works. It's like when you start like focusing on the wrong thing, you can actually end up like moving yourself further away from that thing.
Yes.
Like by focusing on your brand and like focusing on the numbers and doing all these branding tactics, you know, you actually end up sometimes, and I think in our case, you end up pushing yourself further away from what you want. And I know this because as soon as we stopped doing that, our numbers were going up.
Yeah. And,
yeah.
And I guess this is a good transition to the next point, but imagine a hypothetical or a hypothetical parallel universe where, you know, that painting giveaway we did, and stuff like that, and that period of time that we were being very corporate about the branding of the podcast. Imagine that did stimulate a lot of growth for the podcast.
Yeah.
That means that we're going to see that, and we're going to keep doing that, and it's just going to pile on more and more stress in the long run, which is going to, you know, create friction and make this podcast not what we wanted it to be originally. It's going to be unfun. It's going to be disingenuous. Yeah. And we're not going to want to do it even anymore, but we're going to feel like we have to keep doing it that way to make it successful. Yeah. So you should just do what you want with the thing that you're making, and then however far it gets you, that's how far it's going to go, you know? Yeah. 100%. And speaking of the painting giveaway, we wish we knew more about.
So this is, what is this, 4? Number 4?
Yeah, this would be point number 4.
Are we sure? Did we lose count?
No. We said it's been rewarding to commit yourself to something that you don't have an obligation to be doing. Wish we knew that people were gonna be supporting us and listening to us.
Yeah.
wish we got
clear on our values.
Clear values.
Yeah. And now we're talking about number 4.
We wish we knew about how to not lose so much money on a giveaway.
Yes. Okay, so that sounds really specific, but during this like branding period, I was looking into ways to build growth for this podcast. And I was like, oh, let's do a giveaway, And at the time, we were trying to get people to follow us on social media because that's one of the main ways that we promote our podcast. And we found this beautiful painting on Etsy.
By running on creativity.
Check we will forever plug her.
Yeah. Wonderful artist.
Wonderful artist. Absolutely gorgeous painting. It was about $140. And I was thinking, this is just such a beautiful high value item.
Yeah.
How could it not drive traffic? How could it not drive entries?
Yeah.
And we did the whole thing in a really organic way, which I actually really liked. We just did a Google form. And we ended up only getting, a handful of people who entered in.
Yeah.
Basically, people had to follow us on social media, and the more that they followed us, the more times that they were entered into the giveaway.
Right.
And we ended up giving this beautiful painting away to somebody who won, and that was a really nice interaction. But at the end of the day, that was pretty much $140 down the toilet. And for a business that is as small as ours, that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think, and I know business owners out there, even like small family run businesses, $140 is nothing. We are really on a shoestring budget here. We have just enough money on Patreon to cover the hosting for this podcast, and then a teeny tiny little bit left over that mostly gets put towards our website. Our domain really, because we don't even have a website. But that's just what it is. So we can save a little bit over the course of a couple months. And we ended up spending a good chunk of what we had on this painting.
Yeah, and it was an experiment because neither of us had really done anything like that before, so we didn't know exactly how well or not well it was going to go. But I think we both expected it to have a little more traffic.
Yes. Yeah.
I was expecting maybe 30 to 100 entrants. We got I think less than 10.
Yeah, I think it was a maximum of 10. Yeah, because I remember putting the names into the random selector thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we should have done more research on cost-effective marketing. If you are going to do something like that, it's certainly not a bad thing. But make sure you've got the know-how first. Maybe ask somebody who's more proficient in that area.
Yeah. Who's done something like that before.
Yeah.
And then also just know that there's nothing wrong with low cost marketing. The thing is that if you Google podcast how to build your podcast, one of the things that comes up is doing a giveaway like that. But the thing is, a lot of people won't tell you that is not a one size fits all thing, and the amount of money you spend is also not a one size fits all thing.
Yeah.
I kind of want to talk a little bit about what we're kind of moving towards, both in terms of the benefits on the Patreon that we've kind of updated a little bit, and then also some of the guerrilla marketing tactics that we've kind of talked about.
Yeah.
Would now be a good time to share.
Yeah, before we do that, though, I do want to say that all of this said, we don't regret doing the painting giveaway.
Yeah.
And the winner of the painting is probably, very happy with their prize. And
yeah.
I do think that we gained a couple of, consistent fans or listeners from that.
Yeah.
And it was a good learning experience overall. Probably not very cost effective. But it was a learning experience, and there were positive things that came from it. So don't
for sure.
No regrets there.
I would say no regrets, but I would give this advice to anybody who is just starting out. That keep in mind your budget. Like, be mindful of your budget. Be mindful of how much money you actually have to spend, and tailor your marketing tactics accordingly. And don't be afraid to use more low-cost, like, marketing tactics, like just sharing your stuff on social media. Can I now get into some of the guerrilla tactics? Transition. So we've been thinking a lot about, like, how we want to move forward with, like, advertising and, like, just who we want to be, like, what we want the Moonflower show to be. So we've kind of settled on doing some, like, guerrilla marketing. Like, we want to just, like, print out flyers on our own printer and, like, just go around to bulletin boards, like, make them really cryptic, and then have, like, some sort of cryptic, like, I don't know, like a tiny URL that, or maybe just our website, you know? Mm-hmm. I feel like if we put a tiny URL, people are going to be like, oh, is this like a virus or something?
Yeah, no, maybe not do that.
Yeah, but we want to make, like, cryptic posters. We want to, like, just go, like, hang them up on bulletin boards in coffee shops and stuff. Mm-hmm. We thought about, like, doing brochures. We want to, like, take out an ad in, like, a local newspaper.
Yeah, and, like, maybe have a booth somewhere if we can.
Yeah, a table somewhere. Yeah. And yeah, I think that you can kind of keep it fun and, like, keep it analog. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. By all means, if you want to do social media, do social media. I think if you're starting out small, you kind of have to. Yeah. That's kind of where we are. You know, for all that we knock social media, like, it's our one. You know, it's a free outlet to get your stuff out there.
Yes, but I think it's even more powerful in combination with those kinds of marketing tactics. Because when you go out, that's your opportunity to grow and have more people on your social media. Because social media can always kind of come to a standstill if the same people are reading your things over and over again and not really, like, sharing them to their circles. But they're kind of just reading them and intaking them themselves. Yeah. So yeah, not only is it analog and not... has nothing to do with social media, but it's also pretty efficient, I think. Yeah. To do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's cost effective.
Yeah.
It costs way less money. We could have spent $150 on printing out, printing out flyers, you know? Mm-hmm. I want to make little business cards to give people that aren't, like, actual business cards, like, not with a phone number, but with, like a really, like, obscure message. Or, like, a quote, like a really obscure quote from one of our episodes, and it just has, like, our website on the back.
Like a fortune cookie, kind of.
Yeah.
But not without
Can we advertise with fortune cookies, please?
No, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, if we got a fortune cookie maker and then put a little, like, quote inside the fortune cookie and put the website on that is the best marketing thing I've ever heard. Yeah. And then, like, just we go somewhere with a table, be like... Free fortune cookies from the Moonflower Show.
Yes. That would be so fun.
Yeah. Or quote cookies.
Quote cookies.
They wouldn't be
fortune cookies.
Quokies.
Quokies.
I like that.
Quokies. Quokies. Get quoke. Stay quoke.
Stay quoke.
I hate it.
Yeah. I love and hate that.
Yeah. I don't know how to feel. Shall we move on to a number 5?
Well, do you think you're ready for a number 5?
I think I'm ready for a number 5.
I don't know if I'm ready for a number 5. Hold on. Water break. Water break.
Mambo number 5. Have you heard the bike horn version?
Don't. Just don't.
No, look it up.
No.
Yeah, do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is my official unrecommendation.
Number 5. I wish that we knew more about hosting.
Yeah. That was a little awkward to figure out when we first started out.
Yeah.
Because, as we've mentioned before, this podcast in its original form was a sound file on Google Drive.
Yeah, just sent via text message to our friends.
How do we put this on the internet in, like, a place where people can access it.
Yeah, and it was tough because if anybody else has a podcast, if any of you listeners have a podcast, you know what we're talking about. But in order to put your podcast on any streaming platform, other than YouTube, pretty much, what you need is a third-party hosting website that costs money. You upload your podcast to the hosting website, or your own website with an RSS feed if you're savvy. Actually, I don't even know if it's called... I think it is an RSS feed.
I think that's what it is, yeah.
And then you need to go to each of the streaming platforms individually once your audio is uploaded to a hosting platform or your own website with an RSS feed, and you need to fill out a separate form for each streaming platform, and go through a different set of procedures to get your podcast to appear on Spotify and Alexa. There's an Alexa one, or Google Apple Music. I think Google Podcast. I'm not sure if we're there yet. I think we need our own website. But yeah, it was a whole process, and we spent so much time just trying to figure out. We were Googling, how do I put my podcast on Spotify? Trying to log into Spotify and, where do I upload this?
Yeah, it's we can't just make an account on Spotify and, upload it, you know?
Yeah.
You can't put your own stuff on Spotify that easily. I don't know if it works differently for music, because I know people who have music on Spotify, and I guess I could ask them, but I imagine it's a similar process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we made something like 5 or 6 episodes before we were actually on Buzzsprout, so we were uploading them all at once.
Yep. We were. Well, we couldn't even do that because we had a...
Oh yeah, we had a limit.
There's a limit to how many hours of content you can upload per month, so for a while we had a backlog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think our uploads actually started in December of 2020. Yeah, it must have been.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though we actually started making the podcast in May of 2020.
Yes.
So we had a bit of a backlog.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was confusing.
Yeah, and ultimately we figured it out, but I wish that... I just wish we knew more, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because we'd made the decision to make the podcast far before we had made the decision to make this into a consistent podcast before we knew anything about any of this.
Yeah, we just kind of sat down. The first episode we were like, hey, let's just make an episode of a podcast. And that was podcast, which we should really rename to be Pilot.
I disagree, but...
Okay, maybe it could say podcast.
Podcast Pilot.
Wow. Such a genius, baby.
That's called a compromise. It's where nobody's happy.
Not even you listeners. Everybody is upset about that. Where was I going with this? I was going to say something. I guess I just wish that we had known more. Yeah, we started making this. We sat down one day and, we were just let's just make an episode. We put it on Google Drive, just shared it with some friends. And then a couple of months later, we listened to it and we were like, oh, this is actually good. Mm-hmm. Not talking about the audio quality, but, at the time we were really happy with what we had made. And we were like, yeah, let's make this a consistent thing. And we made this decision just sitting around a campfire on vacation. Mm-hmm. Because we were like, yeah, let's do it. We like it. We're happy with what we made. Let's keep doing this consistently. So we were like, yeah, let's just make the content and then we'll worry about getting it uploaded later, which is exactly what we did. But it ended up being kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wish we knew a little bit more about that in advance. I think that brings me to the next point that I'd like to make, which is number 6.
Number 6.
I guess I'm not sure if this is something we learned, but I think that our voice has developed so much over the course of the last year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, for sure. I feel like I don't I hate using this word in so many different contexts, but the vibe of the show has really become very focused and like very what we want it to be.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the earlier episodes.
Yeah.
And just the way that we talk to each other, like back and forth, we've gotten really good at that.
And I think just saying what we mean too.
Mm-hmm.
Making it a point to speak clearly and with purpose and intention, I think, is something that we had to learn. And then, I mean, just having like a consistent introduction that feels genuine to both of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always open this, I'm the one who says like, welcome to the Moonflower Show, you know?
Right.
And I think developing a way to open the show, that like sounds and like feels like us, you know what I mean, was hard. Like I think we opened with burps, like some of the first episodes that we made, which is like, you know, I'm actually really glad that we did that, because at the time it was genuine to us as creative people, you know what I mean? But now I listen to that and I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe that we did that. You know what I mean?
But, you know, we were finding our voice is what we were doing.
Exactly. And I don't even think that we put like that much, I don't think we put in any effort into finding our voice. It just Something's never changed. Here it comes. It's my voice. I don't think that we put a lot of effort into finding our voice.
Wait.
I think it's just something that happened naturally with time.
Oh, you mean the effort comes in the form of just practicing and making more episodes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not something we're like sitting here and scratching our heads about. Like, how should I talk?
Yeah. You just kind of learn how.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, we go back and listen to our episodes. We don't do it like, you know, militaristically. We don't do it religiously.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, maybe we just like to listen to the sound of our own voice, but it's like fun to go back and listen to what we've made. And I think even without like putting in, like, it's not like we sit down and have a meeting and say like, hey, this is what I noticed about our previous episodes and like, here's what I think we should change. It's all like very organic.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there must have been a point at which I realized that there were moments in some of our earlier episodes that were really disorganized and really unclear. And by moments, I mean like entire episodes of just like really, really chaotic energy.
I mean, yeah. That's just a side effect of having me around, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think that it's like both of us have gotten so much more clear now.
Yeah, I've learned how to rein it in when necessary.
Yeah, and it's not even like, I feel like doing that is not like disingenuous to who you are, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just learning how to channel it, you know, is a good way to put it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And learning how to be comfortable speaking in front of a mic, I think, also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is like a certain level of, I mean, we do have this is a public voice, you know, right now. And it is different from how we are when the mic is not on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still us. And I think finding that voice, you know, the Moonflower Show voice, has been a real journey, and it's been absolutely rewarding, especially just to like see our progress over the course of the last year and a half, how much we've improved just by practicing. Like, you know, the more that you do something, the better you're going to get at it, whether you like it or not, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been huge for me.
Yeah, we're basically awesome.
Yeah,
is what we're trying to say here.
I think, yeah, I'm really proud of the progress we've made, and I think it's interesting to me because I'm sure, you know, if we keep doing this, you know, a couple years from now, we're going to listen to this and be like, ugh, I can't believe that we made that, you know?
Maybe.
Maybe. Or maybe
Probably.
I think the difference between what we did on like our first 3 episodes and like this episode and like our last couple episodes is like stark. It's like night and day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll like, you know, it'll the curve will flatten a bit.
Yeah.
In terms of like improvement and finding the voice, but
Yeah. I think that we've found our voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
I think that we can refine it further and it will continue to be refined. I think we've found the thing now.
Refinement.
Like we have found the rock that we are carving that is going to become our voice. Instead of just wandering around aimlessly in a cave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or become our most refined voice, I guess I should say.
Astute.
Yes.
Very astute, babe.
Thank you. How about a number 7?
Number 7.
How about we talk about the deep dives and what that's been like to make the deep dives?
Yeah. It's been fun. It's been educational. Learning how to do a deep dive is hard.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's doing research for a topic that you're not like assigned, or you know, you don't have like a clear place to go for resources on the topic. You're kind of just in the world and you need to know about something.
Yeah.
And you need to know a lot about it, and you need to know enough to make, you know, nuanced, interesting, accurate content about it.
Yeah.
That it's difficult to acquire that kind of knowledge about a subject, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely enlightening, the whole process, but it's time consuming and labored.
It really is. And I think, you know, we've done a couple episodes that I would consider to be deep dives. One of them being Enter the Gamer.
Yeah.
Where we looked at like the history of like a specific archetype of person being like the gamer, like since video games were a thing. I mean, since the 80s at least. See, I don't even know if video games were a thing before then or to what extent. But we had to do substantial research like going into that. And I remember like there came a point when I was like, I need to know the history of the number of people who used Xbox Live. I was like, I need a graph showing like how many people used Xbox Live over time, because we wanted to talk about how that kind of took off at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find it. I couldn't find like just a graph showing the number of people who use Xbox Live at any given year. And I was a little surprised, and I'm sure that such a graph exists somewhere and that information exists somewhere, but tracking that down and tracking down, you know, it didn't end up being a graph, but tracking down like some other useful statistics.
Yeah.
It took some time.
Oh,
you know?
yeah, and it gets harder and harder to find that kind of information the further back you want to go. Like,
Yeah.
Xbox Live, that's around Y2K. And even that stuff is hard because the internet's kind of still like becoming what it is today.
Yeah.
You go back further than that, and like back into the 20th century, information about the 19th century, it starts to get really hard. And I salute you content creators who make this deep dive content about like things that happen in the past that like influence our society today. And like have all this obscure knowledge and are able to speak so affluently about it. I have newfound respect for this type of content, because wow, you have to do
hard.
a lot of behind the scenes research and just like work and probably script writing and just like thinking maybe probably about the topics.
Ultimately, we realized that what goes into a deep dive is like so many different things, because you're making nuanced and interesting content. It needs to be accurate. I think that in a lot of deep dive content, you know, I guess this kind of goes with the point of it being nuanced, but there's all these different dots and these like pieces of information that are kind of being brought to the table, right?
Yeah.
So you have to find those dots. You have to find those like statistics and books and you know, the what's what and who's who of the topic that you're talking about. You need to bring them all to the table, and then you need to connect them in a way that is elegant and compelling and story-based for your audience. And, like, Jesus fucking Christ, it's so difficult.
Yeah. And the Moonflower Show, we kind of have, like, a wide range of subject matter, and we do different kinds of episodes, some of which are deep dives.
Yeah.
Those are always the hardest ones.
Yeah.
For the reasons that we're talking about now. As they're when we sit down and plan a deep dive episode, it's like we're taking an hour or more sometimes at just the initial meeting, and then we're probably we're going off and doing our own research about the topic after the planning meeting, and bringing more stuff back to the table.
Yeah, and I feel like the deep dives that we've been doing are, like, not even that deep. Like, I am proud of what we've done so far, but
it's definitely...
It's a skill that we're building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we're finding that it's really challenging. Yeah. But those are the ones that we have been the most proud of.
Yeah, they definitely, it's rewarding content to make, because you do bring something really really interesting and compelling to the table when you can connect those dots and like put it together in a way that brings something new to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, and you do feel like you are bringing value to the world, and you're connecting ideas in a new way, Not necessarily like bringing new ideas to the table, but kind of like giving them a fresh lens, or giving it a little I really don't want to say makeover.
Yeah.
Giving it a fresh coat of paint almost, I would say.
Yeah, definitely, cuz like an episode like Enter the Gamer, there's been it's the toxicity of online gaming culture has been talked to death ad nauseum on the internet. But I don't think that, or at least to my knowledge, nobody's really taken like a historical approach to it and really examined the origins of how that came to be. Yeah. All the way back to the origin of video games.
And also kind of talked about it in an ethnographic way.
Yes.
Yeah. And in a way that, like, frames this as, like, the archetype of a person, like the it's almost Jungian, the way that we were looking at it.
Yeah. And it's cool because, like, our backgrounds in education and just our personal experiences really informed a lot of the perspectives that we had.
Yeah.
In that episode.
100%. Yeah, so I guess to close out, what was that, 0.7?
Yeah.
Deep dives are hard, but rewarding. And if you are going to make a type of content and you have time and a lot of obscure knowledge and or the willingness to go out and get obscure knowledge, then go for it, man. Go for it. Because it's a lot of fun to make and it's really rewarding. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about a number 8?
I think don't try to imitate what has made other content successful. And this kind of relates back to the marketing matter.
Yeah.
You see like other like accounts or channels doing stuff like giveaways and the kind of content that they're putting out in social media, or like even the kinds of topics they're having, the kinds of things they're talking about in their videos or their podcast episodes. It's good to look for inspiration, but I don't want to say plagiarize. Don't try to copy their style, You have to find your own.
Yeah.
No matter how much you struggle with that and how difficult you may find that. Like we said in the beginning, it was a mess. The Moonflower Show was kind of a mess, but you will find your style. and I think we did struggle to find our style. For a while we struggled, but we at first we were this very chaotic and kind of silly thing, and then we got very corporate, we got very like into the whole brand of it, and we tried to stay very very diligent about
like just like the intro to our podcast, and
not only that, and just like the way that we were structuring our episodes, we tried to like make it very formatted. And that didn't work either, and I think we've really landed on a happy medium that came from an organic process of growth since the beginning of the podcast, rather than, oh, how is this person structuring their videos? Let's use that.
100%, and I think that is true absolutely for our voice and, dare I say, our brand, because I think we do still have a brand. It's just that
I agree.
It's just that the brand is us. The brand is like me, like having my own values and my own like personality that I bring to the table, and that's my brand. Okay, it's just me. The brand is me. All right,
I'm the brand.
Yeah,
you're not entertained.
Right? Like, so I think what you said is absolutely true for our brand, in terms of how that's developed, and then also in terms of what we wanted the podcast to be about. Because when we first started this, we didn't even have a name for it. We were just like, what would be a fun episode to make? So for podcast, we just asked each other questions, because we were like, that'll be like a fun format to do this, and it'll be enjoyable.
It was like a talk show almost. Like oh, we're interviewing each other almost.
And once we kind of decided on a general, and when I say general, I mean very general direction for the podcast, that was when we came up with the name The Moonflower Show, because we were like, okay, we don't know what we want it to be about, but we know that we want it to generate a certain feeling. And we were like, the feeling that we want for our audience is the feeling that you get when it's like 2 a.m. and you're at a sleepover, or you're like hanging out outside, you know, camping or something like that, and you're looking at the stars, you know, you have maybe less on your mind than you usually do, and you are just talking about what you really want to be talking about, like your soul conversation. And we were like, that's the feeling that we wanted to go for, but we didn't know a lot about what we wanted to talk about. So, I mean, for the duration of this podcast, for the duration that it's been around, every time it's time to make an episode, we sit down and we say, okay, what do we want to make? And it is just now, like a year and a half into our work on this, that we're realizing that we kind of have like some different categories of things that we, you know, some different categories in terms of what we like to talk about, and then some different categories in terms of like the type of episode. Like, we like to do these deep dives that are like almost like ethnographic, and we like to do these like fun episodes like the French fry review. We like to do almost like a play with me like episode type, where we're asking each other questions, or like playing Stardew Valley. And we've just really allowed ourselves to like sink into that process of just like we didn't give ourselves like a podcast topic, you know, going into this. It's not like we started with like, okay, this is what we want the podcast to be about. We really just gave ourselves all the freedom in the world, and it is just now that we're kind of like just starting to come up on like, okay, this is what we want to make, you know? And I think that's actually been like really, really crucial. And I think it's absolutely worth like all the times that people have asked me like, hey, what is this podcast about? And I'm like, well, it's kind of like a sleepover. And then they're like, oh, cool. And I'm like, yeah, you have no idea what it is. And I'm like, well, I don't even have any idea what it is either. I think it's absolutely been worth it, because we've given ourselves so much creative freedom to really figure out like what we do want to make. And sometimes the only way to figure that out is to just start making stuff and see what you like to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even if you have a good elevator pitch for your podcast, it's only good if it's good, you know, and if you can keep making it good. So I, at least in my case, I was like, let's allow ourselves freedom rather than restrict ourselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, just we're going to talk about what we want to talk about on this podcast, and it will it will naturally fall into place from there, was always my thought.
Yeah.
And I think it has.
And, I think it's actually really, I think it's beautiful now, and I think it's going to be beautiful down the line that we have this public record of our, process and our, journey of growth as content creators. Yeah. Because our first episode, that was... It was something, and I don't regret it because it got us here, but it is so different from what I would make now. Mm-hmm. But I think that, it is kind of magical, and, it's like a nice story,
Yes.
To see this podcast growing and changing 100%.
Yeah. And I think that might be all we have for this episode.
Yeah. So what was that, 9 or 8?
I think that was 8. Yeah.
There you go. 8 tips / things we learned / what our experience has been like. Facts. Yeah.
Making the Moonflower show.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful note to end on, I think. Is that we are satisfied with where we're at. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to chug along, refine our voice. And hope you find these tidbits helpful if you're trying to make some content or stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're our regular listeners, then I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and that you've kind of enjoyed us grow, or enjoyed watching us grow, I guess I should say. And that this is kind of, it's almost becoming I don't know, it's not quite NPR, but it's NPR Splash.
NPR Splash.
You know what I mean?
That sounds like...
I feel like this could be a show on NPR if we just swore less,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, or maybe not NPR, I don't know. But yeah.
I love that. It's like... That sounds like an elevator pitch. It's NPR Splash.
NPR Splash. We could be on NPR if we just stopped cursing so much.
And if you're a new listener too, and if you want to check out those earlier episodes, brace yourself.
Brace yourself. Maybe turn the volume down and turn it up gradually from there. Yeah, you'll. There's a. Oh my God, the cricket intro.
I liked it. But
I liked it too, but I think it...
it's not yet time.
No.
Crickets.
No, it's not yet time.
It's not cricket time.
Not cricket time. Maybe we will return the crickets one day. We will see. But until then...
Ooh, that just gave me a good idea. But you guys don't get to know what it is.
Ooh, I don't even know what it is. Wow. We will talk to you next time, and we hope you have a good night or good day, whatever's in front of you. And we'll talk to you later, all right?
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.